3 True Elevator Horror Stories. My name is Lila. I was in Denver for a design expo, staying at an old hotel just outside the city. It had this vintage charm people romanticize online, but in person, it felt cold and forgotten. My room was on the 10th floor, and that elevator was the only way up. I met Aiden the second night. He was staying across the hall, freelance photographer from San Diego. We hit it off quickly, nothing romantic, just that easy kind of connection. He offered to walk me to my room after we grabbed dinner nearby. That's when we saw the elevator doors already open. It was empty, or at least we thought so. I stepped in first, Aiden followed. He hit the button, floor 10. The doors slid shut slower than usual, and that's when the lights inside dimmed. Not off, just enough to feel wrong, like twilight indoors. I laughed awkwardly, said maybe we were just tired, but he didn't respond. I turned slightly and saw his eyes locked on the mirror. I looked too. There were 3 reflections, me, him, and something in the corner. A figure, small but hunched. It wasn't moving. The eyes were what froze me, huge, round, glowing red like taillights in fog. A mouth too wide, hanging open like the jaw was broken. The tongue hung out, long and a deep purple touching its chest. I turned fast. Nothing there. Just Aiden and I. The mirror had to be warped. My throat felt dry, my chest tighter with every second. The elevator stopped on 7, but no one came in. The doors stayed open too long, then closed. We reached the 10th floor. I nearly ran out, but Aiden stayed inside. He looked confused. I called him, but his face turned pale. He whispered that he saw it again, in the mirror, behind me. I yanked him by the arm and pulled him out. The elevator doors closed and descended. We stood in the hallway silent for a while. Then a voice echoed faintly through the vent. Slow, raspy, almost like it came from inside a drain. It repeated the word up, over and over. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Aiden. The next morning, the elevator stopped working entirely. A sign read under inspection. But we heard from Mia, the front desk clerk, that no one had filed for maintenance. She had heard similar complaints before, she said, but brushed them off, until she saw it herself. Mia told us about a man named Ellis who had worked as a contractor during the hotel's renovation. He went missing a year ago, last seen entering that same elevator. Never came out. Police found no trace. Hotel covered it quietly. That night, Aiden decided to leave. I was torn, but something told me to stay. I don't know why. Maybe I needed answers. I sat in the lobby alone, watching the elevator. At 3:12 a.m. it dinged. The doors opened slowly. Inside was a man, not Aiden, not Ellis. His face burned and misshaped, hair white and tangled, sticking out like static. Red eyes, wide, knowing. He didn't move. He didn't speak, but I couldn't breathe. Before I could stand, someone stepped between us. A stranger, tall, sharp eyes, wearing a dark coat. He stepped into the elevator without hesitation, looked back once, told me not to run, told me to wait. The doors closed, the elevator went down, but the screen didn't show any floors. Just a static line. It never came back. The hotel removed the elevator the following week. I don't know who he was, but he saved me. I left Denver the next morning. And now I take the stairs, always. They built a new wing on the hotel a few months later. I shouldn't have cared. I wasn't going back. But something about it stuck with me. A news article mentioned it. Said the hotel was refreshing its historic charm. They made no mention of the elevator they sealed off and tore out. I still dream about it. Not the thing in the mirror. Not even the man with the tangled white hair. I dream of the number 10, the button lighting up, the doors closing, the air changing, the moment between floors when everything feels weightless. Then something pulling down, not gravity, something worse. I moved to Chicago, bought a place in an old brownstone, 4th floor walk-up. I don't use elevators anymore, not even at work. My legs burn, my lungs ache, but the stairs are quiet, predictable. Until last week, I was heading up from the lobby. It was late, near midnight, no one around. But I felt it, that weight again. Not fear, not tension, just presence. I stopped on the 2nd floor, glanced over the railing. The hallway stretched quiet, lit amber. I almost laughed, almost, until I heard the hum. It wasn't coming from the hallway, it was beneath my feet. Faint at first, then louder. A mechanical groan that made the walls feel hollow. We didn't have an elevator. I should know. I checked when I moved in, but the hum kept rising. I ran the rest of the way, locked my door, pressed my ear to the floor. It had stopped. I barely slept. The next day, a new panel had appeared in the lobby. Metal, brushed steel, polished like a mirror, embedded in the wall where the mail slots used to be. No construction signs, no maintenance crew, just a panel and a button. The button didn't say anything, just a faint triangle pointing up. I asked my neighbor Adam about it. He hadn't noticed it, said I was overworked. But later that night, I caught him staring at it, frozen, like listening to something I couldn't hear. I called his name, he didn't turn. The day after, he was gone. His door unlocked. Keys left on the kitchen counter. Lights off. No note. I told the landlord. He shrugged, said Adam moved out suddenly, but the mail kept arriving. That night I heard the hum again. I tried to ignore it, but it seeped into the floorboards, into the air. Around 2:30 a.m. I opened my door and looked down the stairwell. The panel in the lobby was glowing faintly blue. Then it dinged. I didn't press it. No one was there. But the panel split open. A door I hadn't seen before slid back, revealing a narrow space behind. Not an elevator, not quite. More like a shaft without depth, black and wrong. Inside stood a figure, same coat, same sharp eyes. It was him, the man from Denver. He didn't move at first. Then he stepped out, walked past me without a word. As he climbed the stairs, I noticed the hum fading. I stood frozen, unsure if I should follow or hide. Then a new sound began, a thump, slow, repetitive, coming from above, my floor. The fourth. I ran up. Every door was shut. Lights flickered. A cold draft crawled under the hallway carpet. I followed the sound until it stopped right outside my apartment. I turned the handle. My door opened on its own. Inside was dark, but not empty. The man was standing by my window, looking out toward the street. I stepped in, asked him who he was. He didn't answer, just turned slowly and held out something in his hand. A photograph. It was old, faded. The man in the photo wasn't him. It was Adam. Behind him, barely visible, was a mirror. And in the corner of that mirror, red eyes. I dropped the photo. The man finally spoke, said one word, down. I asked him what was happening. He shook his head like I wouldn't understand. Said the thing that watches from the mirrors doesn't live in one place. It rides vertical spaces, shifts between floors, buildings, cities. It finds the cracks, and when you see it, really see it, it never lets go. He looked at me, voice low. You took the elevator. That's how it found you. I asked how to stop it. He didn't answer. He walked past me again, out the door, gone. I haven't seen him since. But last night, my bathroom mirror fogged up on its own, and on the glass, traced faintly by something unseen, was a word, up. The apartment in Portland was supposed to be temporary. I picked it for the light and the quiet, but mostly because it had no elevator, just 3 flights of wooden stairs that creaked differently each morning, like they were learning how to groan in new ways. The landlord, a soft-spoken woman named Ruth, said the place had good bones. I didn't ask what that meant. I just nodded and took the keys. That first night, I unpacked only what I needed, then sat near the window, listening. But there was nothing. No street noise, no neighbors moving above or below. It felt like I was alone in the building. 3 days in, I met Marcus and Elle. They lived across the hall. Newlyweds, I think. Friendly in that effortless way, like they'd always belonged to the place. Elle asked if I'd seen the basement door. I said no. Marcus laughed and told her not to spook the new tenant. Later, I found the door. It was tucked behind the laundry machines, painted the same dull gray as the wall, no sign, no handle, just a small keyhole. That night, I dreamed of a hallway with no lights and doors that never opened. In the dream, I walked barefoot over warm tiles. I woke up sweating, unsure why my feet were dirty. A week passed. I kept hearing what I told myself were old pipes groaning through the walls, but the sounds always came in sets of 3, one long, 2 short, like a signal. Like code. One evening I passed Marcus on the stairs. He looked different, pale, distracted. His shirt was buttoned wrong. I asked how he was doing. He paused, then said quietly, "Have you felt it yet?" He didn't wait for a reply. That night I watched the door again. At exactly 2:14 a.m., the air shifted. A warm breeze came up through the floor. The door creaked once like something touched it from the other side. I didn't sleep. The next day, Elle knocked on my door. Her eyes were puffy, voice low. She said Marcus had left in the middle of the night. No note, no bag, no call, just gone. She said it wasn't like him. I offered to help look, but something about the way she stared down the hallway made me think she already knew he wasn't coming back. I asked Ruth, the landlord, if there was a key to the basement. She looked at me like I'd mentioned something unpleasant over dinner, said the basement hadn't been used in years. Sealed for safety, she claimed. That night, I left a glass of water by the door, just to see. In the morning, it was gone, not knocked over, not spilled, gone. No ring on the floor, no trace of moisture, just empty air and an unease that climbed my spine like a cold wire. Elle stopped answering her door. By the third day, her lights were off and I heard movement inside. Not footsteps, something slower, dragging. But when I knocked, the building held its breath. The next morning, her door was open. Inside, everything was in place. Dishes in the sink, shoes by the door. A single line of salt stretched across the bedroom doorway. On the bed, a photograph. It was old, black and white. The hallway again, but this time the basement door was open. And just past it, in the darkness, a shape, not clear, but tall, bent with too many limbs. I left the apartment for a day, just drove aimlessly, ended up by the coast. I didn't tell anyone. When I came back, there was a note slid under my door. It wasn't written in pen. It looked etched into the paper. Don't let it in. That night, I sat awake, lights on. But at 2:14, they all flickered and died. In the silence, I heard a knock. 3 beats, 1 long, 2 shent, closer, but not on my door, from inside the walls. I pressed my ear against the wood. There was breathing. I stepped back. My phone lit up on its own. No call, no message, just the camera opening. It was pointed toward the mirror behind me. In the reflection, something was standing just inside the hallway, not visible in real space, only in the glass. I turned slowly. Nothing, but I heard it breathing. I'm writing this from a motel now, somewhere near the state line. I didn't bring much, just clothes, a toothbrush, and the photo I can't explain. I looked closely at it again. This time, I saw my own face, in the mirror, and behind me, the door was open. I kept the photo in a drawer after that, didn't throw it out, didn't look at it either. Just knowing it was there made the room feel heavier. I moved again, smaller town this time. Rented the upstairs of a quiet house owned by a retired couple, Alan and June. They lived downstairs, always kind, always quiet. There was no basement, no elevator. Just stairs and wide windows that faced the trees. I thought I'd finally left it all behind. At first, things were normal. I worked remotely. Read, went for long walks. I met Dana, who lived across the street. She had a black cat and a habit of humming while watering her porch plants. One afternoon, she invited me over for coffee. Her house smelled like cinnamon and cedar. Comfortable, lived in. But when I mentioned the rental, she paused. That place, she said. I thought it was empty again. I asked what she meant. She glanced toward my house, then said people don't usually stay long upstairs. Alan and June never talk about it. That night I couldn't sleep. The air was still, too still. The sound of a drawer sliding open woke me, though none had moved. I checked every room. The photo was back on my desk. Same hallway, same shadow past the open door. But now the figure was closer. The next morning I asked Alan about the previous tenants. He smiled but didn't answer. June looked at him, then at me. She said something vague about drafts, old beams, stories. Later I saw them through the window, whispering. The way their eyes moved toward the stairs made something turn cold in my stomach. That evening I heard the humming again, soft, familiar. I assumed it was Dana. I looked outside. Her house was dark. The humming was coming from the hallway. I stepped out slowly. Each board under my feet felt warmer than the last. The sound grew clearer, a tune I didn't know, but felt like I should. I found nothing. But when I returned to my room, the desk chair was facing the window. I hadn't left it that way. The photo was now on the floor. That night, I dreamed I was walking down stairs that never ended. Not spiraling, just forward. The walls on either side pulsed like they were breathing. When I woke, I had splinters in my hands. The days blurred. Dana came by once, brought tea. She seemed tired. Said she hadn't slept well either. Something about her house not feeling like her own anymore. She asked if I heard the knocks. I told her no. I lied. 3 knocks, always at the same time. Not loud, just intentional, like they were waiting for me to answer. One evening, the power flickered. Not out, just a moment of quiet buzz, like the house inhaled. Then I saw it. Not the shadow, not the figure. My own reflection, standing when I was sitting. It blinked. I didn't. I covered every mirror that night, every shiny surface, even the screen of my phone. Still, I could feel something watching from behind glass. June brought me a pie the next morning, said it was a family recipe. Her hands trembled when I took it. I saw the inside of her wrist, 3 faint lines. Burned or drawn, I couldn't tell. That night, I decided to leave, packed light, just what fit in one bag. But when I reached the front door, it was already open. Alan was standing just outside, his face calm, but his voice was low. "It's not the place, it's you." Then he turned and walked down the street, disappearing into the dark like he belonged there. I stayed up until sunrise. Nothing moved, no knocks, no sounds, just silence that felt stretched too thin. The next morning, Dana's porch plants were wilted. Her cat sat at the edge of my steps, staring. I took the photo and burned it in the sink. The flame curled fast, eager. When it was gone, the room felt lighter. But on the back of the sink mirror, drawn in soot, were 3 marks. I'm writing this from a library 2 towns over. I haven't gone home yet. Maybe I won't. But I passed a mirror this morning. My reflection blinked again. Only this time, I wasn't looking.